my God, my book, of course.
Tell me.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to give too much of it away because I'm very superstitious, so I don't like to speak of things before they're finished. But it's so far a masterpiece, if I do say so myself.
So I went to the bookstore today to buy the Julia Fox memoir, and as I was paying, the bookseller said to me, "Oh, would you like a bag with that, sir?" And I said to him, yeah. Yeah, I'm gonna need a bag for that. Like, respectfully, I don't think I can take the subway with this, like, under my arm. This has honestly been one of my most hotly anticipated books of the year, mostly because I think that Julia Fox is making being a celebrity messy again. And for that, I salute her services to pop culture. Like, I miss the days where you could log onto Twitter and Lorde was saying that Diplo had a tiny penis. Or like, it would be a random Tuesday lunchtime and Rihanna would be picking a fight with someone. Or like when Zayn Malik called Max from The Wanted Chlamydia Boy. Like, those were the days. Bring us back to that place. Messy celebrity Twitter is my Roman Empire. I think about it constantly. I feel nostalgia for that time. Those were the days before social media was kind of policed and publicists decided that actually being too accessible was a bad thing. Nowadays, everything is so polished and curated and thought through, and it feels like everything has been approved by like 3 different people before they press post. Julia Fox has been a spanner in the works with that whole system, and she's essentially created a pop culture legacy by being brutally honest and unabashedly herself.
This is a total flop.
There is no filter when it comes to Julia Fox, and maybe that's why this book is called Down the Drain. Because it kind of feels like we're going to get to see the messy stuff. We're going to get to see the sewage of her mind. And honestly, I kind of love that. That's kind of what I think we're missing right now. The other thing that interests me about this book is that previously I've spoken a lot on this channel about ghostwriters and ghostwritten celebrity memoirs. My most recent video was a deep dive into the complicated ethics of ghostwriting, specifically Millie Bobby Brown, Zoella, Britney Spears, Prince Harry, so much more. And I saw on TikTok that Julia Fox has been adamantly telling everyone, shouting from the rooftops, that she wrote every word in this book.
Just so we're clear, I wrote every single word in this book. This is all me, baby. And yes, I look brolic AF, superhero vibes. You already know. Obsessed with the way this came out. This is a dream come true for me.
She also said on TikTok that she came up with the creative concept for the cover and this whole shoot. And I respect it. I respect the artistry and the care and consideration for the art that you put out into the world. She really said, actually, I did it myself.
I actually did it myself. Yeah. Nice.
And I'm super intrigued to hear the story of this uncut gem, Josh Safdie's muse, the icon, the legend, and the moment that is Julia Fox. And I feel like this is about to be chaos. Specifically because I actually had to go to 3 different bookstores just to track this down, because online it said that each of those bookstores had copies of this book, and then when I went in, the staff told me they think that they had been stolen. And then I was like, you know what, that kind of checks out, because from a lot of the stories I've heard of Julia Fox, I think that she was quite prone to stealing things too back in the day. So weirdly, the fact that these bookstores didn't have copies of her books because they'd been stolen was kind of on brand. I've mentioned this a few times before, but I actually really love to listen to audiobooks alongside celebrity memoirs, and Julia Fox narrates her own audiobook, which I do think is just such a great experience. So I am going to be listening to the audiobook alongside reading this. I just think getting to hear their story in their own words whilst you read along adds so much texture, so here we go. Identities have been changed to protect the innocent and the guilty. We are in for a ride. She also dedicates the book to her father and then says, "Dad, please do not read this book." And you know that means it's gonna be good. So she starts off the book by talking about how she moved to New York as a kid and references when her family were actually kind of homeless and at one point lived on her dad's sailing boat. For work, her dad would renovate houses, and so there were periods of time where her and her family would live in the houses secretly that he was actually renovating because they were empty, so they would basically live in them. She also says she used to go swimming in the Hudson River, which can I just say is insane, because I swear that is like toxic waste. That is a terrifying prospect. Okay, I have to hold up my hands here and say I didn't know very much about Julia Fox before reading this book. And so I really didn't know that she had grown up between Italy and New York. And reading a book about the city that you live in is just such a special experience. It's so much more immersive when you like know all of the streets that they're talking about, all of the bars and clubs. Obviously she's a child right now, so she's not necessarily in bars and clubs, but I imagine that's coming. And yeah, it's just such a cool experience reading a book about a city that you actually know really well. So I'm kind of loving it so far, not gonna lie. At the moment, she's mostly talking about how she like is being very crafty and precocious as a child, stealing things, managing to set up a television while her dad was out at work. Me and my one brain cell as a 5-year-old were not achieving the things that she was doing at that age. I think my biggest concern was, can Bob the Builder fix it? Meanwhile, she's like rewiring a television set. Okay, a fun fact I've just learned about Julia Fox is that she was named after a character in the book her mum was reading when she was pregnant with her, which is also how I got my name. Me and Julia Fox, 2 peas in a pod, or just 2 peas with not very imaginative parents. I mean, my name is Jack. I was born in a year where Jack was the most popular baby name in that year. I have 3 first names, Jack, Benjamin, Edwards. Do you think I'm ever getting a username on social media that doesn't have like hundreds of numbers after it? It's been a nightmare. Thanks, mum and dad. But I was actually named after a character in the book that my mum was reading while she was pregnant with me, who was a baby called Jack. So there you go, me and Julia Fox, named after book characters, and here we are. One thing I really enjoy in memoirs is when people write about themselves as a child or a teenager, and then they use kind of the vocabulary and the language they would have used at that time. Like, she talks here about the term wasp, and then she says, whatever that means. And that was one thing I really enjoyed about Jeanette McCurdy's memoir as well, that when she was writing about herself as a child, you really felt like you were feeling the child's naivety and worldview, I suppose, at that time. And that's all done through writing style. And that's a real talent to be able to do that and to be able to mimic the way that you might have spoken at the time that you're writing about. Obviously, it's hard to tell right now because I haven't got to the later stages of the book, whether that tone shifts and changes and matures as we go through the book, but it's a good sign, and it's something that I kind of appreciate in memoir or autobiography writing. And here she actually talks about how she stole a nightlight from Barnes & Noble, which is the store that people had stolen this book from. So what goes around comes around, I guess. Also, she says, when I grow up, I'm going to be rich. And honestly, she manifested that. I just read an insane anecdote about her first experience of acting. So basically, Julia's dad's friend got her a role in this film called Fire Dancer, right? She goes on set, she performs, she gets her first experience of acting, and then Fire Dancer is delayed in production because her dad's friend murdered the director, murdered him in cold blood, and his body was found chopped up in a bag on the side of a street somewhere in Queens. What? Like, huh? That's mental. Years later, is produced and edited and is in cinemas. Her and her dad buy tickets, they go to see it, and her scenes got cut. Can you imagine? I'm just so shook at how flippantly she mentioned that her dad's friend killed someone and chopped him up. This is a roller coaster. And I want to stay buckled in. It says here that as a kid, she was kind of bullied by her classmates for always wearing the same clothes. And I have to say, I kind of love that she's now a style icon. I love when a book kind of gets to say, screw you, look where I am now. A lot of this chapter is about how her father was quite abusive when she was younger. But a stylistic choice that I thought was interesting to note is that it's all written in the present tense. So it's like first person, present tense, which gives this real sense of like immediacy, and it makes it very immersive because it really feels like you are going through it with her, like in real time. I'm always very fascinated when people do choose to employ the present tense in this way. And in this book, it's very, very effective because it does really feel like there's this stream of things happening to her. And as the reader, you feel like you're right there with her. Also, side note, if you take a shot for every time the word pussy is mentioned in this book, you will be hammered. Don't be a pussy. Pink is for pussies. Crying is for pussies. This is what I'm doing with my literature degree. We also have this. Ella informs me that she's a dominatrix and that she beats guys up for money, and I'm blown away by how fun that sounds. She is 11. At this point, there are so many brilliant one-liners. I'm only 11, but I know what blue balls are. Honestly, she's a very funny storyteller. And a good one too. This honestly reads like fiction. So far, I've noted that she was doing drugs aged 11, going to anti-Iraq protests, getting piercings on her tongue and her nipple, shoplifting, doing graffiti. I think at age 11, did I even know what a nipple was? At age 11, I was collecting Pokemon cards. She was collecting body piercings. Growing up in New York sounds wild, I have to say. Wait, I'm addicted to the rush. Isn't that a Troye Sivan song? So this is how she talks about shoplifting. Actually, she is shoplifting right now from Bloomingdale's, which I'm pretty sure she later did a campaign for. So Honestly, the glow up is real. She says, I'm addicted to the rush, the indescribable sensation that pours itself over my entire body. My heart beats faster, my step feels lighter, my stomach flutters. I love my new pants, but nothing beats the thrill of walking past the metal detectors and getting away with it. So right here, this is kind of odd, but it references that she was in a gang called the Stoned Monroes. That's what it says in the text version, but the audio version refers to them as the Lady Spades, and this happens twice, so it's not an accident. And I'm kind of intrigued why they changed that name, and I'm wondering which one came first. I assume the print version came first and then they corrected it in the audio version, but how odd. I have another iconic one-liner for you. Are you guys hungry? Do you want some pizza rolls? She asks us with a warm, inviting smile, as if she didn't just almost force us to watch her kill herself. Just another day in the life of Julia Fox. As a 12-year-old, by the way. As a 12-year-old child. So I actually think that Julia Fox has an allergy, and that allergy is to not being iconic. Because everything she says, everything she does, just ends up being so incredibly funny, or at least a good story. So this is when she was at school in Italy and the Pope died, and so she went on a school trip to the Vatican, and she basically has an argument with this boy over a cigarette, and then they make up by hugging. She says, we hug for a millisecond when I feel a strong grip on my shoulder. The head priest rips us apart, swings me around, and slaps me in the face in front of everyone, including the dead Pope. I'm stunned. This behavior is unacceptable in the Vatican, you animal, he says. The rest of the trip, I'm fuming. Did I seriously just wait 16 hours to get slapped in front of the dead Pope? And she says, I didn't even get to have my moment with him. As in the dead Pope. I think that might take the cake for my favorite scene in this book so far. At this point, she goes missing in New York City, and her parents put up like missing person posters, and her only concern is that she looks so ugly in the pictures that they choose of her. Honestly, this is something I think about regularly. Like, if I ever do go missing, if something awful ever does happen to me, I'm relying on my friends to pick the picture of me and not my parents. You can do a full photo shoot with your mom or your dad or a family member. They'll take 10 pictures, and you can absolutely trust they will pick the ugliest one of you to post on their Facebook account. I swear this is a universal experience. Like, parents are not good at selecting a good picture of you. I want to say this here and now. If I ever go missing, I want pre-approved photos only. If it's not on my Instagram, don't put it on the missing person poster. If it wasn't taken in the last month, don't put it on the missing person poster. I would rather stay missing than you put an ugly photo of me on a lamppost somewhere. Julia Fox, a woman of the people. This is my people's princess. Okay, so this next section is all about how she has this boyfriend who gets in trouble with the police because he goes and like beats up a child outside school. And anyway, so he is essentially on the run, and he like drags Julia Fox with him, and she's like locked up in his room, and she ends up getting loads of spots, like those of zits, and she's complaining to him like, oh my god, like my skin is breaking out. And you know what he says to her? Do you know what this man says? He turns to her and with complete earnestness says, that's actually a good thing, babe. Now other people won't be attracted to you. Because then he could have her all to himself. This man is evil. Hello, it is the next day now. I read a little bit more of the book in bed last night, and we're gonna try and finish it today. Also, I went and picked up some books that I'd left in storage, and look at this. Isn't that incredible? This next section of the video is a paid partnership with BetterHelp, because BetterHelp's mission, I think, is so important, and that is to make therapy more accessible. Because if there is something that is disrupting your happiness or preventing you from achieving your goals and being the best version of yourself, then online therapy could actually be the way forward and give you a new perspective on life, or even just give you someone to talk to. I find that if I keep things inside, bottled up, it just becomes worse and worse and worse and like snowballs. Put your thoughts into words and share them with someone is the most helpful thing you can ever do. And therapy can also equip you with tools to help you see life in a different way and approach life differently. Regardless of whether you have a clinical mental health issue or whether you just need someone to speak to, BetterHelp is a great way of doing that. BetterHelp is a platform that helps make finding a therapist really, really easy. It's online, it's remote, and by filling out a few questions, BetterHelp can match you with a credentialed therapist in as little as a few days, so you can start your journey ASAP. It's super easy to sign up and get matched with a therapist on betterhelp.com. There's a link in my description. You can actually head to betterhelp.com/Edwards, and clicking that link will get you 10% off your first month of BetterHelp, so you can connect with a therapist, see how things work for you. And it's important to remember too that finding a therapist is a little bit like dating, and it's worth thinking about whether your therapist is matching your needs, and if they're not, then you can easily change to someone new. Online therapy has already given me a soundboard for my ideas and my thoughts and helped me to make sense of them and get kind of back on track and feel more in control of my life. So if you are struggling, consider online therapy with BetterHelp, and thank you so much to BetterHelp for working with me. So that whole chapter that I was reading last night was all about this horrible, toxic, abusive relationship that Julia Fox was in. Her boyfriend actually ended up going to prison and then was kind of like harassing her over the phone while he was in jail, having her followed. He just had this like real control over her life, and it's honestly very harrowing to read. I'm sure it was absolutely awful. And this leads to a lot of drug issues for her. If you have a copy of the book, on page 144, there is this really vivid description of an overdose. And it's just such a vulnerable thing to write about. And I'm genuinely really, really impressed by the way this is written. And you know, I feel like I focused on a few kind of like funny little details and anecdotes, but there's also some really, really moving and powerful scenes. And she really has like bared her soul in this book. And I really admire that level of pure honesty, which I think is kind of what we love and appreciate Julia Fox for in general. But in this book, it's intense. She also references her favorite book, and you know we love a celebrity book recommendation on this channel. Her favorite book is Junkie by William S. Burroughs. The chapter following that relationship is called Aftershock, and it's kind of about just trying to pick up the pieces after being shattered by someone. And then we move on to this section, which is about her becoming a dominatrix. And I love this quote. So she's talking about like the recruitment process of becoming a dominatrix. So she sees the listing online and like the requirements, the job description. And she says, I don't have experience as a dominatrix, but I certainly have some experience in hating men. And honestly, after the experiences she's had so far in this book, and we're only 164 pages in, I do not blame her. And hey, you might as well make some money from it, right? This book is just so brilliant because none of these words are in the Bible. I think reading one chapter of this, maybe even one page of this book, would kill a Victorian child. And I have to say, it's very interesting learning about what it's like to be a dominatrix. Because I feel like we all know what that means, but actually reading the perspective of someone who's in the room with the men who pay her for this stuff is really fascinating. And then there's some workplace beef. I have to read you this scene because it's insane. One day, I come into work to find that my cherry red Jimmy Choo pumps, gifted to me by a loyal foot fetishist, were used as an ashtray. I scoop them up and rush them into the lounge, demanding to know who defaced them. Mistress Sadie whispers that a certain Mistress Violet is the culprit. And I don't know if this is true or not, she says, but I wouldn't wear your black leather leotard anymore. Why? I ask, as I'm wearing it. She hesitates a moment. I'm pretty sure she peed on it, but you didn't hear it from me. She does this to all the new girls. And then Julia Fox says, I was wondering why it was damp. That is pure evil. The people that Julia Fox meets, honestly, are a different breed. But then Julia Fox decides to get revenge. She says, she just unleashed the beast and I'm going to ruin her life for fun. And the next couple pages are just her kind of like trying to plot revenge and pouring urine like all over this girl's locker. And all the while she's kind of stuck in this messy little world. She's dreaming of someone who can get her out of that. And the person she's dreaming of is a sugar daddy. She says, every night before bed, I spend an hour scrolling through Backpage searching for my long lost sugar daddy. I shut my eyes and pray, please God, please send me a sugar daddy. I promise I'll be so good. I'll never do anything bad ever again. I think that image is just, frankly, incredible. Oh my God, her wish came true. God answered her prayers. Also another iconic line, I can always be a stripper if all else fails. At least it wouldn't require the same amount of mental gymnastics as BDSM. She should put that on a t-shirt. Okay, the man got her a Mercedes-Benz for her birthday. She really manifested incredibly well. Does she have like a hotline to God or something? Wait a minute, you're throwing your whole life down the drain. I get it, I see. I love when you get to the point where the title is referenced. And then she repeats it here, and she repeats it here. I love that idea of kind of reclaiming an insult that someone gives you and being like, haha. Oh, finally a relatable chapter. Here's a note to self and also a note to everyone. Like, this is genuinely like a public service announcement. Do not cross Julia Fox. Someone screws her over and she says, I ordered 200 hissing cockroaches from Madagascar. How does one even go about doing that? And convince my old friend Serena to release them in the club in exchange for $100. But before the cockroaches arrive, a reporter from Page 6 calls me from a private number. I pick it up and start singing like a bird. Like, if I even wanted to order, like this has never crossed my mind before, but if I even wanted to order cockroaches, specifically from Madagascar, I don't even know where I would begin. What do you Google to find that? Is that like an Amazon Prime thing? Do they have Black Friday deals on Madagascan cockroaches? One thing about Julia, she's gonna get revenge and she's going to do it in the most elaborate possible way so that you never forget it. Not a day passes in this woman's life that isn't chaotic. You have fish in your bathtub and you think someone made a voodoo doll of you. And there are, in fact, a dozen large freshwater fish in my bathtub. Because of course, at this point in the book, nothing could shock me, I swear. Okay, update. 10 pages have passed and I stand well and truly corrected. I can't believe I'm about to read this out on the internet, but she says, I dig the heroin out of my vagina and pull out the moist bundle. Unfortunately, the sweat from my vagina juices penetrated the tissue paper and the wax baggies, turning the powder into a thick tar. But that doesn't stop Eric, who scrapes them with a razor blade and dumps the brown goop into a spoon. He shrugs and slurps the gunk into his rusty syringe. I kinda like that your pussy juice is on it, he says. None of these words are in the Bible. But then immediately following that, you'll have something so poetic like, we tore this city in half with our love. Get you a girl who can do both. Oh my God, you guys, it's the iconic moment. Josh Safdie, it's time for Uncut Gems.
I mean, I was Josh Safdie's muse when he wrote Uncut Gems.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Like things like
Right.
that.
Okay guys, little house update. So this chair just arrived. I love it. This is my desk area. How obsessed are we with this lamp? I need to get a light bulb for it, but it's giving library. It's giving banker. Not wanker, banker. My rug just arrived and also this throw. My matching cushions are currently being held hostage by the US Postal Service, but you win some, you lose some, okay? Curating this space has basically been how I've been spending all of my time that I haven't been reading the Julia Fox book. As you come into my room, there's this little stool that I found on the street. I'm sure rats were probably like using this as their little playground, and now I have it in my home. And also, yes, I do use a bottle of vodka as a doorstop. Julia Fox would be proud. Wait, I kind of love this. Yeah. Oh yeah. My friends are coming to visit me for a couple days, so I made this little sign for them because they've never been to New York before. Taylor Swift, you're welcome for the 1989 Taylor's version promo. Please don't sue me. I have this little stack of yellow books with Sex and Rage at the top. And honestly, Sex and Rage is how you could describe some of the chapters of Julia Fox's book. So back to the book. Really, really, really sadly and tragically, a couple of Julia Fox's friends actually died of overdoses, and the way that she writes about them is so beautiful. I think like the true love story in this book is her friendships and the people that she kind of grew up with and came of age with, and so seeing her lose those people is so sad, but this is also a really beautiful elegy to those girls. And I didn't realize, well, firstly, I didn't know that Julia Fox was a mother, but secondly, that her son, originally his due date was on her best friend's birthday, and that was why she decided to keep the child. But I really encourage you to read this book for these scenes because it is devastating, but written with so much tenderness and honesty and fairness too. I think it's a really fair account of these people and their lives, and this must have been so tough to write about, so I really applaud her for this. It was not on my bingo card that Julia Fox's book would make me well up and want to cry. But here we are. In this section, she's talking about how her son was born a little bit earlier than she was expecting. And she's panicking, not because she hasn't packed a bag for the hospital, but because she hasn't taken her maternity photo shoot yet. And so they managed to get it done just before they induced labor. Oh my God, just after filming that clip where I said that the US Postal Service weren't giving me my pillowcases, look what just arrived, baby. We're in the business. I made a lot of unnecessary phone calls today because I think they just falsely marked them as delivered when actually they hadn't delivered them yet. But at least I have my pillowcases now. So I've made it to the final chapter, which I'm actually very sad about because I don't want this to end. But we're kind of catching up pretty quickly, pretty rapidly with like the present day. And although I do imagine Julia Fox might actually be able to predict the future, this is all we've got for now. And I think this is really important to note because Julia Fox often, I think, will be discredited as being only famous because she dated Kanye West or only recognizable because of that relationship. And so I really love that she kept that to the final chapter and let the rest of her story kind of speak for itself. She shared her journey up to that point to kind of say, look, I was a person before this specific thing that happened to me where I was kind of thrust into the A-list realm of like celebrity gossip and culture. And what I also love that she does is she never mentions Kanye West or Kim Kardashian for that matter by name. As you can see, I've kind of circled it here so you can see she refers to Kanye West as the famous artist, the artist, the artist. Throughout, he's always just the artist. And this is something we've seen other people do when it comes to memoirs. I mentioned Jeanette McCurdy earlier in this video with I'm Glad My Mum Died, and she does the same thing with Dan Schneider. She refers to him exclusively as the creator of the show that she was on, rather than mentioning him by name. And I think that stripping of someone's identity, stripping someone of their name, is such a power move. It's a way of saying, you do not own me anymore, you have no control over me. In fact, I have so much control that I can write this whole thing about you without ever mentioning your name, and people will still know who I'm referring to. And so it kind of lets the story speak for itself rather than being all centered on a name. So this is something we see in books like The Handmaid's Tale, like the importance of identity and the power play involved in taking that from someone, and how that can strip someone of power, but it can also reclaim someone else's power and dominance. It tells us who's in control of the narrative, it tells us who is pulling the strings, and in this case, it's Julia Fox, and I think that she probably feels that this narrative has been taken away from her and manipulated and twisted by other people. It definitely sounds in this book like it was a very controlling or controlled situation in which she was kind of being told what to do, what to say, what to be dressed in. Like Kanye West really asserted power over what she wore, and that bodily autonomy too is really, really important. And so I think he took so much away from her, you know, in that moment, that her just taking away his name in this book is a really cool way of kind of doing an Uno reverse card. Oh, that was so weird, it just mentioned Uno. I never thought I would read a scene of Julia Fox and Kanye West playing Uno. But there you go. Again, some of these stories are insane. Like, he bought her an outfit and she said, I can't wear this with a bra. And so he says, I'll get you a boob job if you want. As if that's the solution here. Crazy, crazy, crazy. And we also have the pretty infamous story of when Kanye West bought Julia Fox and all of her friends Birkin bags. I love this quote, and this kind of brings us back to the idea of reclaiming things that I spoke about before. I'm reclaiming my body and rejecting the notion that I exist only to be visually pleasing. Boom, mic drop. We've reached the final page. I'm so sad. When Julia Fox said this book was a masterpiece, I think we all kind of laughed, but actually this was really spectacular. My final thoughts on this book are that it totally proved me wrong. I really was expecting this to not be anywhere near as good as it was. I definitely underestimated this book, and it's the best way to be proved wrong ever. The book is so raw and vulnerable and so sincere. It's a complete removal of any type of filter, if Julia Fox even had one to start with, but it's such a powerful story. And like I said, this reads like fiction at times because Julia Fox has lived so many lifetimes, so much has happened to her. You could read this book entirely for plot alone. I would say that it reads a lot at times like unprocessed trauma. Maybe the act of writing this book is part of that process for her, but I would say that a lot of the time there is not necessarily that like introspection or analysis of what's going on. It's kind of like telling you each individual thing in a chronological, linear way. Like it's the story of her life, not necessarily an assessment of it, but I suppose that's something that maybe comes a little bit later in life. You know, I'm always a little bit skeptical of people who write autobiographies or memoirs quite early in their lives or in their careers. But like, I think now is the perfect time for Julia Fox to do this, because otherwise the book would be like War and Peace, because it would be so long. Like, she has lived some crazy, crazy times. So I do understand why she's written this book, and I think maybe in the future, you know, I would love to read the follow-up to this and see where else her career goes. And she's on this amazing trajectory right now where she's, like I said, a style icon, a cultural icon. She's really making a lot of waves, and I think that's only going to continue as she kind of goes from strength to strength. And books like this really help us to get to know the person behind the facade and get to know the person on their own terms, outside of like the media personality that's been created for them, or that sometimes they play into in order to capitalize on it. That's just marketing, that's just being smart with your image. But I think that this book gives us so much added depth into who Julia Fox actually really is, beyond the headlines, beyond all of the rumors and the speculation and the misconceptions too. This really feels like she took back control of the narrative. Without a ghostwriter, she was the creative director on these photo shoots and stuff, and I really appreciate that. I really respect that. So I would genuinely highly recommend this book. I thought it was great. I'm definitely going to be keeping a very close eye on Julia Fox's career. I think she's onto incredible things. I mean, Julia, I live in New York too. Let's be best friends. Let's get coffee. she does not want to get coffee with me, but if she ever did, the offer is there. This book and Paris Hilton's book just prove that you cannot underestimate someone just because of their media persona. And you know what? I love that Julia Fox is a great writer, but also a meme machine and a cultural shapeshifter. I think she is just awesome. So I have a lot of respect for her after reading this book, and I hope that you go out and read it because it's really wonderful. So thank you so much for spending the last couple of days with me. All the best, stay in touch, have a wonderful day. Subscribe if you're new, like this video if you liked it, and I'll see you in the comment section to discuss. And I will see you next time. Bye-bye!